just a couple inches of hot soapy water. So that way, if I'm working with those eggs and I go across their potential contaminants at room temperature, you've got to be careful in like chicken juice or something like that. I've got to find my way to the sink. I've got to turn on the water control. I've got to make sure the faucet's in the right place. I got to grab the soap. All of that stuff, now I have to go backward and uncontaminate.
So this is Don't Harp On With Me, Rob Sears, and I am delighted to speak to Debra from The Blind Kitchen. But as I've said to Debra off this call, it marks the end of an era, because up until now, I've been able to tell Lauren that I am too sight impaired to be around sharp knives, hot things on the cooker. I don't really cook or bake anymore. But Debra's going to change all of that for me. So Debra, firstly, thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. Now, Debra, tell me a little bit about how the Blind Kitchen came to be.
Okay, well, I am blind. I have retinitis pigmentosa, and I took my blind training at the Oregon Commission for the Blind, and I've taught adults before. And at some point, I said I want to teach adults, but I didn't know what I wanted to teach. And I was in a meal prep class at the commission when the light bulb went out that I would like to teach cooking. I don't know how to teach cooking because I'm very skills oriented, and I'd like to have it very organized. And the way I was taught was wonderful. She's a beautiful woman, still a friend of mine, but it wasn't organized and more comfortable with. So I said, I want to go to culinary school, and they all thought I was crazy, but I was the only blind student in culinary school. I went to culinary school. 4 days after I graduated, I'm teaching at the Oregon Commission for the Blind and loving it. And then that was in June of 2019. And then, of course, in March of 2020, COVID hit. And I wasn't allowed to teach in person anymore. None of us were. It was a mystery. Nobody really knew what this whole pandemic was about, but people were saying better safe than sorry in terms of protecting our students' health. And so I had about a year and a half to put all the information I'd gathered in culinary school and from watching the cooking videos while COVID happened. And I organized all that information and ended up, that's how the Blind Kitchen came to be. I thought I need to share this. This is some pretty cool stuff.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, we'll get into some of the really cool gadgets. Guys like me, we love gadgets, right? And
and technology.
Kind of fuse the kitchen and safety and all of the fears that visually impaired and blind people have around cooking in the kitchen, and come up with some really neat stuff. And also, I mean, I'll let you describe it. The way that things are marketed and packaged, it's really, really it's really clever and really set up well for blind people. So where do we start? Where do we start with your really cool kitchen stuff?
Well, I can start with let's talk about what the fears in the kitchen are. There's a reason you didn't want to go back into the kitchen after vision loss. Knives do cut you. We do get burns. Our skins are sensitive. These are real fears. And the other fear often reported to me and often felt myself is fear of embarrassment. Am I going to be a messy cook? Am I going to be spilling things and knocking things over? And then how will my food look when it's done? Is it going to look ridiculous and other people can see it? I can't. And I really don't want to be touching their food. So what ways can I do that? And then the other one is fear of undercooking food or overcooking food, where you might make your friends and family sick. And those are all real fears that that if you haven't been taught the techniques or the tools, how could you possibly know? And so this is part of how the Blind Kitchen came to be. So I have people that are totally blind, totally comfortable with cooking, but just want to get some new ideas, new techniques. And I have other people that are extremely good cooks, but due often to age-related vision loss causes, they have no idea how to get back there and be that person they used to be, the one that bakes the lasagna or bakes the turkey or whatever they're doing, whatever they used to do and were famous for. Now they don't know how to get back. And the Blind Kitchen, it has some tools and techniques that'll hopefully give people the confidence and the ability to return to the kitchen so they can cook safely.
Which sounds great, but yeah, I was just thinking of the food you listed. Lauren would love me to cook that for her. Yeah, like I say, this fills me with dread, but I'm gonna go all at it, and I promise you that I would get stuck in and buy some stuff and some nice food and show you it. So let's have a look at the fears first of all. So it's a sharp knife, for example. How do I stop myself from cutting my fingers off?
Good question. We'll keep them out of the way for one thing, but no, there's other tools that are a lot more. So I'll tell you, we have a total of about 20 tools in the blind kitchen that have to do with cutting and chopping. Perhaps if you had to only get one tool in your toolkit, I would recommend you get the cut glove. And what that is, it's a cut resistant glove. It's made out of thin threaded weave, and I am often in presentations and I put the glove on my hand, the hand that would be holding the food, and then I put my palm straight up facing the ceiling, and I run a knife back and forth across my palm, and I am not getting cut. The glove does not get cut. I feel the pressure. And if I'm holding like a potato or an apple or a piece of food in my hand and I'm starting to cut, and all of a sudden I feel pressure on the hand holding the food and I don't expect it, I'm just going to stop. If I had not been wearing that glove, by the time my brain got the message that that knife was making contact with my skin, it would be too late. By the time my brain got it, I'd already be cut. So that cut glove is a real good tool. And the other place it comes in handy, and remember, these were not made for people with vision loss. They're used in commercial kitchens, and so they're meant for anyone. And probably the handiest place it comes in is if you're grating cheese or potatoes or carrots. You've got those big box graters with the angled sides and many, many, many blades. And I don't know of any cook that hasn't left their knuckle skin in some type of food that they are grating up. So, but if you put this glove on, and now you're holding the food with a gloved hand, and you're grating. When I feel it snag, and I don't expect to, again, I'm just going to stop, and there won't be any skin in my grated carrots. So that's an easy tool. It's not expensive at all, and you can hand wash it and dry it, or you can throw it in the laundry. I do that, and it's just a really good tool to have around.
Wow, yeah. When you were saying those things, describing there's a part of me that's like, I just want to buy one to test it, just to see with the knife. And I've definitely grated my knuckles and my hands grating cheese. So
That's
yeah, I feel that. I feel that pain.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the testosterone. When I had my younger students in the classes, they were high school graduates, but some were 18 or 19. They loved to test the cut glove.
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely. Always, as soon as someone says this will stop this happening, it's like, I need to try this. I need to give this a go. What about burning?
So burning is another fear, and there's several. So in the blind kitchen, we don't only sell tools, that's our bread and butter, but the heart of the blind kitchen is the library. And there's a lot of completely free tips and techniques and knowledge to help keep you free from burning yourself. So the most important tool I'd say that we have is they're called heat gloves. And what they are, they're kind of, the old-fashioned kind of oven mitts, or are rectangular or round, or they might be a mitten where you've got four fingers in one cavity and the thumb in the other, and they're quilted and they're thick and they provide excellent protection against heat, but they offer no tactile flexibility. And once you're stuck on there, you can't really move it. You're committed to it. The heat gloves are made with 2 layers of cotton, which is not enough to protect you completely from burning it. That's not enough. And they've got 4 fingers and a thumb in the gloves. So now you've got some flexibility to move your fingers to adjust to make sure your grip is comfortable on that pan or whatever. But what makes them really blind friendly, again, not made for blind people, but they have silicone designs all over the palms, the fingers, the front, and the back. So they're flexible, that you can bend your fingers because of the cotton. And because if you bought all silicone gloves, they'd be very stiff if they were made. So this is the nice combination of those 2 tools that work are combined in one. And they also offer skid qualities. Silicone doesn't slide around on glass or smooth unless it's really greasy. It will, but if you've got a clean steel pan, that's not, your cans won't slip on it. So those heat gloves are really good. But there's a video on our website I'd encourage people to look at, and it's how to center a pan on a hot stove if you're blind. Because if you can't see it, you certainly can't touch it after you've turned it on, whether it's gas or electric or even more intimidating, a flat glass top ceramic top stove, where there's no tactile information, only heat. There's a video on there that basically says you can touch the top of a pan, of a rim of a pan, big or small, as long as you have to make sure that the heating element is underneath it. And the way you find that out is you put the pan on the heating element and you can tap the top of that pan rim for just a second. Tap and then pull it away. And it's going to cool immediately. You're not going to get burned with a single tap. Can I touch hot food or hot liquid? No, because that liquid's going to come away with my finger and continue to burn me. That's not okay. But a steel pan or a ceramic pan, anything that you can touch and come away without any residue. And so if I'm touching that pan and I'm going around, like let's say the clock, I want it to be equally hot at the top of that pan all the way around. So let's say I'm touching the top of the pan, I'm just checking, and that's what I do mostly when I'm cooking on the stovetop. And all of a sudden at 2 o'clock, I notice it's a lot hotter. And so this is how I know it's not centered anymore, because instead of the heating element being under the pan, now the pan is slid off, maybe while I was stirring, and it's coming up the side of the pan, making the 2 o'clock part of the pot much hotter. So now all I have to do is gently nudge it back towards that 2 o'clock side so that that heating element is once again underneath. And do I get it right every time? Absolutely not. But I'm going to continue to check until it all feels even all the way around. So there's a lot of techniques that didn't involve any tools at all, but that's one good technique. And I'll tell you another one that you probably have in your kitchen. Lauren's going to be my new best friend, by the way. And that's going to be a long wooden utensil, generally a wooden spoon. So if it has a long handle, the ones we sell in the blind kitchen, I think are 16 or 17 inches. And what that does is if you put it in a pot on the stove, pretty much no matter how big your pot is, that spoon, number one, can't fall down inside the pan. If you've ever had a spoon fall down and try and get it out from hot bubbling liquid, it's dangerous whether you have vision or not. It is just that avoids that scenario.
Yep.
The other thing it does is it extends above the rim of the pan. So if I'm a little nervous about touching that metal of the pan, or I'm not exactly sure where it is, I can hover higher than the pan and I'm going to find that wooden spoon. And because it doesn't conduct heat, it is not going to be hot, even though the pot and the food in it is. It's going to stay cool like the air because it's exposed to air. And the other nice thing about it is if you're cooking something for most foods like marinara sauce or something like that, you can, instead of taking the spoon out of the pan, reaching across the counter, putting it on a spoon rest, drip, 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 you know what I'm talking about, you can just leave it in the pan. It's not going to burn. It doesn't conduct heat. So it makes you be a little bit of a cleaner cook, which is that fear of embarrassment. Again, we can't see if it drops. We can't hold our hand under like our palm because if it drops in, it's going to be super hot, the food. So that avoids that scenario as well. So those are a couple of strategies and techniques and a tool to help people with vision loss and other people too to manage heat in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's really good. My dogs are going to be a bit upset about it because they always follow me into the kitchen in the anticipation that I'm going to drop something at some point. Lauren's loving this. The dogs are not enjoying it, I can tell. But yeah, it's really interesting because just little things. So there's a whole library of information about how to avoid mishaps and things in the kitchen, which I think is great.
Yeah, it also, the other things, if you like technology, it has ways to label things. Like there's a company called Way Around, which works with an app on your phone and you buy their special labels and you actually record information onto those labels and they can work in the freezer. They're wonderful. The Pen Friend, I'm sure many people have heard about that. You record in your own voice to labels, and then every time you touch this magic pen to the label, it will tell you what you recorded onto it. Now they've got the Meta smart glasses. They're pretty amazing. The Meta Ray-Bans. Uh, there's a lot of different apps like Way Around, Be My Eyes, Seeing AI. There are a lot of different apps out there that can really help you with technology to know what's inside a container and also how to label the container. So when you go back in 6 months, you'll know which soup is a can of mushroom and which is the cream of chicken because they're going to be exactly alike in weight and you can't smell. So if they're you can use a rubber band for that situation. Let's say I do have a can of cream of mushroom and I do have a can of cream of chicken and I just got home from the store. So right now I know which is which. I can just take a rubber band and put it around the mushroom soup. And because mushroom has an R in it and chicken doesn't, rubber band mushroom, I'll make that, I assign meaning to that rubber band. You can do it any way you want. And then when I go to the cabinet 6 months later, they're standing side by side. I'll know which is which if I remember what my system was.
Yep. Wow. Yeah, that's cool. I so we did a bit on cutting, we did a bit on chopping, a bit on burning. How do you make the presentation look good? And this is something that's it's quite interesting because one of my blind content creator friends, Claire, she created a video and she posted a story about some comments, some pretty nasty comments that she got regarding how it looks, and how awful it was. Which, like you said at the start, if you can't see the food, then you really can't do a lot for the presentation of it on the plate. But if I'm serving up dinner for 4 people, you kind of want to be able to make it look at least half decent, right? So how do you deal with that?
Good question. And you can make it look very decent. So there's a couple of things that have to do with plating, with presentation. One is you want all of your guests to get the same amount. If you give your brother-in-law 2 scoops of mashed potatoes and your sister only gets one, you're going to have a lot of family problems there. So one tool that you can use that's perfect for presentation is a portion scoop, like an ice cream scoop. They sell them in like 42 different sizes. And one of my favorite things to plate is rice or also mashed potatoes, things with starch in them. I have an 8-ounce ice cream scoop. So it's about a cup of mashed potatoes each person will get. I pack it into that scoop, level it off. So now I know I'm getting exactly 8 ounces. Tip it upside down over the plate in the center. And now I've got this little dome, perfect dome of mashed potatoes or perfect dome of rice. And then it's easy enough to sprinkle a little parsley on that or a little bit of toasted nuts or whatever to make it attractive. Other things you can do, which are interesting, is we have something called a baking grid pan. Basically, it's a pan that cuts and cooks at the same time. So it's not really cutting. You're baking it with this nonstick grid. So when it bakes, it's going to bake 18 equal rectangular pieces. You can use that for stuffing, like at Thanksgiving, you can bake that. I've baked zucchini bread. I've cut marshmallow squares. I don't bake it in those, but while it's still soft, I can just press that grid down in that pan and they're cut with one push. So that baking grid pan, and of course, any cakes, it's very hard to cut like a 13 by 9 cake into equal pieces. It's just, you don't really want to touch it and it's too long. But if it's already baked into pieces and then you put the frosting on it, all you have to do is get a spatula and separate it out. So there are different. And the one more thing that's really good is to bake individual dishes like ramekins, whether they're round, whether they're square, whether they're oval and glass. People love getting their own little special dish. So that way that food's going to be contained inside the dish and it's going to look attractive. You can wipe the sides of it down after you're done cooking before your guests see it. So it's a very nice, normal way of presenting food and it keeps it neat. One tool that we have besides the baking grid pan that is really cool too, it's called an egg ring. And when you put liquid food into a pan, such as an egg or pancake batter, you have no control over where that liquid's going to run to unless you use a tool that'll keep it contained in a predictable place and a predictable shape. So this is just a silicone ring. You crack the egg in it. Once the egg gets set, it won't run anymore after at some point once the proteins all heat up and solidify. Now you can just lift that ring off and you've got the perfect circle and you can make four of those perfect circles. And so everybody gets the same presentations. And by the way, that they're 3 inches around, perfect size for an English muffin or a breakfast sandwich. That's not a coincidence, I think.
Absolutely, that's amazing. That's really cool. And we said before about not being quite so messy, and I know we picked up on that a little bit with the big spoon, etc. But is there some stuff, some real easy stuff to use to keep the kitchen tidy while you're cooking?
Oh my goodness. So a couple of strategies. And this stuff you can buy work trays in the blind kitchen, or you can probably get them at a local restaurant store, or because they're work trays. They're cafeteria trays or trays they give you in a hospital to eat. So they're virtually indestructible. And they have that slight edge side. So if I am cooking and I accidentally knock something over, I did it when I could see perfectly. It happens to all of us, but tends to happen to us more often. So let's say I'm cooking with something liquid. I knocked the bottle over. In the past, it would run across the counter, down the front of my cabinet, onto the floor. It would just cleanup would be a disaster. But now it's going to probably, unless it's a huge amount of liquid, it's going to be contained within that tray. And I might even be able to capture it using a funnel and put it back in the bottle that it came out of and not have to throw it away. Or at the very least, I can carry it to the sink and empty it into the sink and it'll clean up will be quick and easy. Another thing you can do is like, let's talk about the eggs again. Let's say you're cracking eggs, and so now you've got the eggshells, walking them over to the garbage, and you can pull the garbage over next to your feet. But I'm going to kick that thing every single time. I am going to forget it is there. So I found a better way, and actually it was from Rachel Ray, a scraps bowl. It could be any bowl in your house that you have. Rachel Ray sells them like $40 and they say garbage bowl or something on it, but you can use any dish. And when you crack the eggs, now it's up the upper top left of my work tray and I can just drop those into there and I don't have to leave. I can grab the next egg. So that's another way of staying organized. And you can use another work tray to organize your ingredients so that they're all available to you and then you can put them away as you go. And the other thing I use a work tray for every time is a cutting board, because most cutting boards are made of wood and they have flat edges. They're flat edges that you can fall off. It's a block, basically. If you use these work trays, I've never cut through one, and I have some that came over on the Mayflower. They are old, and I just use that for cutting up any produce or meat or whatever, and it helps keep it clean. One more tool. This is not a tool. This is a strategy. The first thing I do when I go to cook is I run a sink of hot soapy water, just a couple of inches of hot soapy water. So that way, if I'm working with those eggs and I go across there's potential contaminants at room temperature, you've got to be careful in like chicken juice or something like that. I've got to find my way to the sink. I've got to turn on the water control. I got to make sure the faucet's in the right place. I got to grab the soap. All of that stuff now I have to go backwards and uncontaminate. But if I have a couple of inches of hot soapy water, I can use the back of my hands or my forearms, find my way to the sink, and plunge them immediately. There's nothing to decontaminate it. Now my hands are clean to grab soap or to grab a towel or rinse or whatever I need to do. And the reason I only run a couple of inches is because it takes me longer to cook with vision loss. It's just the way it is. I'm sure there's very fast blind cooks out there. I'm not one of them. So it can get cold and kind of gross after a short time. But if I turn on the hot water and just pour some more in there, it revives the suds, it brings up the temperature, and I'm good to go again. And it only takes a couple of seconds. Yeah. So that's a really good tip for anybody. Again, not just for blind and visually impaired, but for us, it's especially helpful.
Okay. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Deborah.
Uh-oh.
So we spoke about a couple of sort of populations of RP people who might find this information really useful. So if you've got somebody who is newly diagnosed with RP, what would your one bit of advice about continuing in the kitchen with sight loss be?
That it's possible. It's possible if you have the right information or the right tools. You can't do everything. Nobody can do everything. And so like one thing I can't do is devein a shrimp. There is just no tactile information there and no visual information that can help me. It looks like mush when I'm done with it. I had to do it in culinary school. It wasn't pretty. And it is what it is. So there are some things you can't do. Figure out what you want to do and then figure out how to do it. Most people fall into one school. They're either bakers or they do more of the savory, the stovetop cooking and the spices and stuff like that. Figure out what you want to do because that'll bring you joy. And that'll keep you motivated. If you make a mistake, oops, I messed that one up here. I really want some chocolate cake. I'm going to try it again. So you find something you like doing, and then you're more likely to return even after you have a setback. And you're going to have setbacks. Ever watch the cooking shows? They set things on fire all the time.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Now, I'm thinking more about people like me. So, um, could I cook more than I do? I probably could. So I've got a good amount of vision left, but there's just something that keeps me out of the kitchen. There's like you say, there's the burns, the cuts. There's always a reason why we shouldn't get in the kitchen. So what would your advice be for people like me who are kind of, I could get in, maybe not. What's the advice there?
Well, my advice would be so part of me is thinking, I don't think you really like cooking. That's probably not what you really want to do, and that's fine. I don't like cleaning bathrooms, but it's something I have to do. But I don't like, let's say, changing the oil on the car. I wouldn't like doing that. I would have no urge to get my hands dirty doing that, although I don't mind getting my hands dirty cooking. It's a whole different thing. So I would say don't beat yourself up if you don't like it, but my main advice would be don't let fear keep you out of there. If the desire isn't there, that's fine. Order food to be delivered. That's okay. But if you have the desire, don't let any of those fears stop you. There's usually a way.
Yeah, because I'm thinking for the longest time I love banana bread and I love flapjack and I've never done it. It sounds awful, but because of I just don't want to burn myself, don't like the heat. I've always stayed away from it. So maybe that's
Yeah.
something to start with and see how it goes.
Yeah, and I'd say do it with supervision at the beginning. Have Lauren come in there with you and say, "Hey, I I learned about this tool that I can make a flapjack with and know where it's at and whatever. Watch the video. I go through it. I do an egg right on it, which is the same as a pancake or a flapjack. But and she can help guide you through it. And then once you're successful at it, you're yeah, it's scary to do it the first time, but the second time it's less scary. Third time, and the other one, what was I so afraid of? It's just that's the way any new task works that has any kind of intimidating factor.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I feel I'm going to be researching and baking some stuff very soon.
You have
Um,
to send some to me.
yeah, maybe I'll bring some over. How's that? That's good. That's good. Well, I've really enjoyed this. What is your most favorite thing? What motivated you to kind of learn to push past your blindness and get cracking? Is there a particular dish that is like that's your specialty, that's your thing?
Oh, good. My favorite thing to do is sauces because you can just make them go any direction you want. It can be creamy or it can be, silky or it can be, heavy on the oregano or maybe more paprika forward or smoky like that. I tend to like to do sauces and whether that's sweet or savory, and take them to the direction I want to go. And I usually am kind of a one or two herb person or spice person because like Italian blend is wonderful, but it's got like four or five different things and you can't tell them apart. I like to be able to name the ingredient that is the profile of the dish. And it's very fun because you can also go to other countries that way. You can go Asian, you can go Italian, you can go Mexican, you can go French. American if you're not feeling entirely
Yes.
enthusiastic.
Absolutely, that's amazing. Well, look, I'll bring some flapjack over, and you make some cool sauces. How's that sound?
You've got it. You've got it.
Great. Deborah, I'm gonna put the links to the Blind Kitchen and all your bits and pieces and some probably some fun, information and all of the bits from the library on the description to this. So it's super useful. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they've enjoyed this and want to find out more?
Sure, you can go to the website. We're web-based only, so it's theblindkitchen.com. Or if you want to write to me, I answer all the emails that come into info@theblindkitchen.com.
Amazing. Cool. Well, I will make sure that those are available, and yeah, we will see. There might be a whole host of males around the age of 40 in the UK baking flapjacks. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Deborah. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you. You have a good day.